Activision, a career on the rise, prophecy, and Activision. Straight out of PBI Software, I secured a contract with Activision to develop Prophecy, The Fall of Trinidad. Prophecy was based on one of my failed, rejected Dungeons & Dragons modules. I was trying to get out of PBI Software, and so I was cold calling every publisher that I could find the name and phone number for. It did not matter how big or small they were. I reached out to every single phone number I found, even if there were half a dozen for the same company. I called them all. I believed in myself. I believed that I had a name for myself. I thought because I had published not one but 4 games, The Tower of Miraglan, Sea Strike, Monte Carlo, and Cavern Cobra, I was somebody, wasn't I? It was incredible, though. No one seemed to want to listen or even talk to me. It was incredible when a receptionist forwarded me to a producer in Activision. Yes, just like that. It was fortune, albeit fortune made by me with so much effort and diligence. Recognizing my published history, though, the producer asked me to come in and meet with him. Of course, I went there as soon as he would meet me. He said right off if we could meet shortly and find maybe the right compensation agreement if I had a good pitch. He told me that he could sign a contract immediately with the right experience. He told me that Activision wanted to make an adventure role-playing game, and since I had written The Tower of Miraglan, I should pitch a role-playing game. Well, I went home and I made a massive 100-plus page pitch using a Dungeons & Dragons module that I had written before, also rejected, called Resendorf, the Gendorian Empire. Well, Activision was so impressed that I could generate such a detailed adventure world and pitch it so quickly that they focused then on the money instead. And I was cheap, it turned out, because I wanted to make the game. Things went smoothly until one day the vice president of marketing, a man named Kelly Flock, decided that he liked my game so much that his ideas should be integrated into it. Well, his ideas were outright dumb and awful, and I had the contractual right to say what went in and what did not go into my game. The fight was on. Activision's vice president of marketing, Kelly Flock, he was full of hubris, and he carried himself as smug, all-powerful, and wealthy, an executive of power. He came across as a royal prick. I learned over time as a cautionary tale that Kelly had a reputation for setting people up and framing them. He would hire a prostitute to seduce competitors and videotape them, potentially, if possible, using illicit drugs like cocaine. The victim happily participated in both experiences, drugs and sex. So Kelly would then have the ability, through twisted logic, that it was okay to blackmail them to get his way. Kelly was a scumbag, and he rationalized doing his criminal evil things to control, coerce, and manipulate, extort people. He would freely use blackmail to secure good reviews or suppress bad ones. He would obtain better contract terms. Worst, he apparently would exert control over game development schedules and designs. I would not let such a loser tell me what to do or direct my game design or schedule, and I certainly was not prey to his beguiling trickster ways. I stood my ground and I told him, no, I have the contractual right to do only what I want in my game. But he threatened to cancel the contract if I did not comply. He was trying to force my hand. And he did. He forced my hand. But not the way he wanted. I was forced to escalate. I called the Vice President of Development, Sherry Whiteley, and I explained to her that Kelly Flock was doing bad things, violating my contract, and I informed her that I might have to seek an attorney to deal with these issues and even litigate potentially. I told her I did not want that to happen, which is why I was seeking her out for help. Well, that was the end of our conversation over lunch. But later that night, that evening, Kelly Flock called me at home in a drunken stupor, damning me for getting him fired. Wow, I thought. But he ranted and drifted off, almost hanging up. I almost hung up on him. It was so confusing and meandering. Finally, he drifted off and did hang up. The next day, Sherry called me and explained that Kelly had a history of overstepping his authority, and that my experience was the final straw, so they let him go. She assured me such encroachment on my rights as a developer would not happen again. They did not, and Prophecy shipped as planned. Remarkably, many years later, a producer came to me and said, "Hey, you know a guy named Kelly Flock? I met him at the Consumer Electronics Show, CES, in Vegas over a really big dinner. Kelly was drunk out of his mind and climbed up on top of the table, and he exclaimed, 'Look, I'm dancing on the grave of Richard Seaborn. Man, you must have really pissed him off. He hates you. What'd you do to that guy?' Well, the story of Kelly Flock and my getting him fired at Activision is a sordid tale. This memory reminds me, though, of how actions long past can influence the present. Sometimes you know about it. Sometimes you do not know what has happened or what is being said about you outside of your witness and earshot. But knowing or not knowing makes no difference. The tree did fall in the forest, and it did affect you. Later on, Kelly was leading Paramount Interactive, which ultimately failed as a game publisher due to its recurring bad ideas and decisions. In fact, Kelly left a trail of ruined companies following his employment termination at Activision. Karma bit Kelly in the butt, as he deserved, with his string of failures following his attempt to tell me what to do. I explained the backstory to the producer, and he could only shake his head in disbelief at how low and pathetic someone must be in their career to publicly be so drunk and petty. He marveled at how major companies like Paramount would hire him in leadership positions. The world was evidently not fair at all, but there did seem to be karmic justice in the end, at least for Kelly Flock. However, evil triumphed despite karma, as Kelly Flock rose back to become a senior executive in Electronic Arts, then Sony of America, then Sony Online Entertainment, then THQ, again Paramount, and so on. Apparently, without a Richard confronting and overcoming the Kelly flocks of the world, they will rise and succeed over others, regardless if they are good or not themselves. I learned over time that evil triumphs over good reliably, unless good makes sure that it does not. It became apparent to me later in life that prophecy was an analog to my childhood. An everyday laborer became the ruler of the kingdom by partnering with demons in a pact that would make him king, but upon his death they would assume his form and rule the kingdom as their own. The king would also have to do their bidding once per week, absolutely anything they said. And there was a final condition. The king would live a natural life, but be immune to non-magical weapons and could not harm himself. It was physically impossible to harm him without magic. The proposed cost to the king did not seem like a cost at all. He would be near immortal for his lifetime, could not be harmed. But there was always a catch. The demons said the future children of the king, at the age of 10, would become cursed to become lizard-like humanoids that would be called Gendors. They celebrated as Gendors, they would be strong, and they would be hard, if not impossible, to kill. They were celebrated as Gendors. They could still talk and play and be like other children and grow into adulthood. They would simply be near indestructible humanoid lizards. It seemed like an easy choice to make to the king. Lowly laborer forever and die without a penny, or become that king of the land, with the only condition that if he had children, they would look like lizards when they turned 10, but become immune to harm. Well, it was not him, and he may never have children, so he agreed. And let's fast forward with the story where he is king and he is jaded with the tedium of kingdom, ruling in a court with laws and troubles. It was not the fantasy that he imagined, and he did bear children, 3 children, all unintended, but he did love them. He loved them with all of his heart. And when those children turned 10, just as the curse was written, they did turn into lizard humanoids, the Gendors. The kingdom became known as the Gendorian Empire, as his children became the de facto rulers, representing the king as they ventured outward into the empire and the king grew old. But the Gendors fought amongst each other for power. As lizards, they were feared and shunned. No one wanted to be near them, even though one of the 3 was kind and really wanted to help people. But even one negative experience outweighed 1,000 positive ones, and so the people viewed all Gendors as bad. It did not matter that one would be good, for 2 were cruel, thus all 3 could not be trusted. The demons inflicted great harm to the kingdom's economy, its military, its freedoms, and even its culture. It became a slaving, bloodthirsty country with only 1 edict per week from the demons. It was amazing how deadly executive orders can become to a civilization. The king wished to kill himself to free his children from the curse, even if it meant the demons would take over his body and further corrupt the kingdom. The damage to the kingdom had been done, and his children were corrupted and suffering. The king believed their evil was their response to the horror of being lizards without friends or social connections, and all but rejection and hate upon them. The king was cursed that he could not hurt himself, and so certainly could not kill himself. He had to live out his life to that old age and die from natural causes. He had to witness his children suffer all the while, his kingdom dissolved into chaos and despair. All because he just wanted to be king. His story ends with the player reaching the king and finding a loophole. The curse could be broken if the king died via suicide by cop. With a magical weapon, with a magical sword, the king could be slain by another, thereby preventing him from living out a natural life. And so, with a snicker snatch of a magical blade, the king was slain. The curse was broken, and his children restored to human form. And the demons were banished. Happy ending for all. The parallels of all of this did not strike me at all until later in life. My mother was the king. She made a deal with the demons who represented my father, Silver. The 3 Gendors were my 2 sisters and me. Of course, I was the conflicted, good Gendor. My mother's pact with my father spawned unintended children, who as they grew older became uglier and more wicked in their behavior, much like the Gendor children were human when they had been kind, and were wicked when they became the Gendorian cruel lizards. The only way out of my cursed home life in San Martin was to blow up my world and escape the demons, even if that meant harming the relationship with my own parents and moving out at 18 to forge my own way, whether it be making games, attending college, neither or both. I was blowing up my accursed home, just like blowing up Castle Trinidon, the home of the Gendors, in the final scene of Prophecy, driving those demons away in the fiery collapse. Prophecy, the fall of Trinidon, was clearly a coping mechanism for me to channel my childhood traumas outside of myself into an analog that would distance me from otherwise potentially debilitating memories and scars.